of surviving so-called Jews in the world is of Eastern European, and thus perhaps mainly of Khazar origin. If so, this would mean that their ancestors came not out from the Jordan, but from the Volga, not from Canaan, but from the Caucasus, once believed to be the cradle of the Aryan race, and that genetically they are more closely related to the Hun, the Igu and the Magyar tribes than to the seed of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. Should this turn out to be the case, which it is the case, then the term Semitism would become void of meaning, because on a misrepresentation shared by both the killers and their victims, the story of the Khazar Empire as it slowly emerges from the past begins to look like the most cruel hoax which history has ever perpetrated. Because it is. These people who are claiming to be Jews is one of the most cruel hoax that's ever been perpetrated on God's chosen people. Now, when it speaks of then that these people are not of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, they are of Abraham, Isaac, but not of Jacob, but of Isaac, because they descend from Esau, and Esau was Jacob's twin, not identical twin, biological twin. Yeah, so they do descend from Isaac, but not from Jacob. Yeah, so I say once again, they are Shemites and Semites, whatever they want to call themselves, but the word is Shem and not Sem, S-H-E-M, not S-E-M, so you'd be a Shemite, not a Semite, right? So they are Shemites, just like the Arabs are Shemites, because they're descended from, Ishmael comes from Abraham, yeah? Whereas your Hamites, which are Africans, are not Shemites. So they can be anti-Shemites because they are Hamites. But you can't be an anti-Shemite if you descend from Shem. And nearly all those Arabs descend from Shem. It's as simple as that. So does the Caucasian white man, Esau, descend from Shem. And so does the true children of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel, the Israelites, all descend from Shem. Okay, but who are these remarkable people? Page 19. So who are these remarkable people? Remarkable as much by their power and achievement as by their own conversion to a religion of outcasts. The descriptions that have come down to us originate in hostile sources and cannot be taken as fact value. As to the Khazars, an Arab chronicler writes, they are to the north of the inhabited earth towards the seventh clime, having over their heads the constellation of the plough. Their land is old and wet, accordingly their complexions are white, their eyes blue, and their hair flowing and predominantly reddish. Their bodies large and their natures cold. Their general aspect is wild. So this was an Arab chronicler who lived during the times of when the Khazars were about, was describing them. Yeah, he was describing what the Khazars look like. And that's exactly what a lot of them look like today. With their blue eyes, their reddish head. Yeah, those who got reddish hair, dark black hair. Yeah, their pale skin. You can see these people today. Who they are. A Georgian chronicle, echoing an ancient tradition, identifies them with the host of Gog and Magog, wild men with hideous faces and the manners of wild beasts, eaters of blood. An Armenian writer refers to the horrible multitude of Khazars with insolent broad lashes, with insolent broad lashless faces and long falling hair like women. Okay. It says here, thus the term Turk in the sense in which it was used by medieval writers and often also by modern ethnologists refers primarily to language and not to race. In this case, the Huns and Khazars were Turkic people. The Khazar language was supposedly a Shovish dialect of Turkish, which still survives in the autonomous Shovash Soviet Republic between the Volga and the Sura. All we can say with safety is that the Khazars were a Turkic tribe who erupted from the Asian steppes probably in the 5th century of our era. The origin of the name Khazar and the modern derivations to which it gave rise has also been the subject of much ingenious speculation. Most likely the word is derived from the Turkish root gaz, to wander, and simply means nomad, because that's exactly what they were. They were nomads, they were wanderers. This is why they had no homeland. They was wandering from one country to another, trying to basically taking what they can get out of it before they moved on to another. That's exactly what they were, nomads. Right, 19, page 20. It mentions the Khazars in a list of people who inhabit the region of the Caucasus. Other sources indicate that they were already much in evidence a century earlier and intimately connected with the Huns. Yeah? But the Prychus also has anecdotes to tell about a people subject to the Huns, whom he called Khazars. Yeah, that's Akatzirs. Khazars. Yeah, Khazars. That is very likely the Khazars or white Khazars, as distinct from the black Khazars. The Byzantine Emperor Prychus tells us tried to win this warrior race over to his side, but the greedy Khazar chieftain named Karidak considered the bribe offered to him inadequate and sided with the Huns. Yeah. Prychus Chronicle confirms that the Khazars appeared on the European scene about the middle of the 5th century as a people under Hunnish sovereignty, and may be regarded together with the Magyars and other tribes as later offsprings of Attila's horde. It says during the second half of the 6th century they became the dominant force among the tribes north of the Caucasus. A number of these tribes, the Saburs, the Saragurs, the Samandars, the Balangars, are from this day onwards no longer mentioned by name in the sources. They had been subdued and absorbed by the Khazars. Yes, so all those tribes that they conquered over there, they absorbed them into their empire, and they became and they became part of their people, basically. Okay, it says, this first Turkish state, if one may call it, that lasted for a century and then fell apart, leaving hardly any trace. However, it was only after the establishment of this kingdom that the name Turk was used to apply to a Pacific nation as distinct from other Turkic-speaking peoples like the Khazars and the Bulgars. The Khazars had been under Hun's tutelage, then under Turkish tutelage. After the eclipse of the Turks in the middle of the 7th century, it was their turn to rule the kingdom of the north, as the Persians and Byzantines came to call it. Thus, the first few decades of the 7th century, just before the Muslim hurricane was unleashed from Arabia, which was the Muhammad times, basically, when they was converting everybody over to Islam, the Middle East was dominated by a triangle of powers, Byzantine, Persia and West Turkish Empire. The first two of these had been waging intimate war against each other for a century, and both seemed on the verge of collapse. In the sequel, Byzantine recovered, but the Persian kingdom was soon to meet its doom, and the Khazars were actually in on the kill. Of course. There is another picturesque passage in an Armenian chronicle quoting the text of what might be called an order of mobilization issued by the Khazar ruler for the peoples against Persia. It was addressed to all tribes and peoples. Under Khazar authority, inhabitants of the mountains and the plains, living under roofs or open sky, having their heads shaved or wearing their hair long. In the first 20 years of the Hijra, Muhammad's flight to Medina in 622, with which the Arab calendar starts, the Muslims had conquered Persia, Syria, Mesopotamia, Egypt, and surrounded the Byzantine heartland, the present-day Turkey. Yeah, in a deadly semicircle which extended from the Mediterranean to the Caucasus and the southern shores of the Caspian. The Caucasus was a formidable natural obstacle, but no more forbidding than the Pyrenees, and it could be negotiated by the pass of Dario or bypass through the defile of Darban along the Caspian shore. At one stage during these 15 years of fighting, the Khazars overran Georgia and Armenia, inflicting a total defeat on the Arab army in the Battle of Ardabil in 730 AD, and advanced as far as Mosul, which is modern-day Iraq, and Diyarbakir, more than halfway to Damascus, capital of the Caliphate. But a freshly raised Muslim army stemmed the tide, and the Khazars retreated homeland across the mountains. The next year, Masalama ibn Malik, most famed Arab general of his time, who had formerly commanded the siege of Constantinople, took Balanjar and even got as far as Samandar, another Khazar town further north. It says, Marwan made an offer of alliance to the Khazar Khagan, which is the Khazar king, then attacked by surprise through both passes. The Khazar army, unable to recover from the initial shock, retreated as far as the Volga. The Khagan was forced to ask for terms. Marwan, in accordance with the routine followed in other conquered countries, requested the Khagan's conversion to the true faith, which is to become a Muslim. The Khagan compiled, but his conversion to Islam must have been an act of lip service, for no more is heard of the episode in the Arab or Byzantine sources, in contrast to the lasting effects of the establishment of Judaism as a state religion, which took place a few years later. So basically, he was offered to become a Muslim in Islam. The Khazar king, they call him the Khagan, yeah, so they call the kings of Khazar Khagan, everyone has that title, yeah. And he lip service, like I said earlier, but didn't practice it, didn't take it on. But a few years later, it says here, what did they do? They established Judaism as the state religion. Right, so we're going to go to page 48. And that's page 48, yeah? Because we're reading extracts from the book. Thus, Khazaria was by no means isolated from the civilized world. Compared to its tribal neighbours in the north, it was a cosmopolitan country open to all sorts of cultural and religious influences. Yet, jealousy, defending its independence against the two ecclesiastical world powers, we shall see what this attitude prepared the ground for the coup d'état, which established Judaism as a state religion. Yeah? So, 57. So, page 57. A speculative answer to this question has recently been proposed by Artamonov. He suggests that the acceptance of Judaism as a state religion was the result of a coup d'état, yeah, which at the same time reduced the Khagan, descendant of a pagan dynasty, whose allegiance to the Mosaic laws could not really be trusted to a mere figurehead. Yeah. So before the conversion, the Khagan was still reported to play an active role, as for instance in his dealing with Justinian, who was the emperor of the Byzantine Empire. This is a hypothesis. Okay. Yet it seems probably that the two events, the adoption of Judaism and the establishment of a double kingship, were somehow connected. So we're on page 58. On the religion of the Hebrews, writes Berry, had exercised a profound influence on the creed of Islam, and it had been a basis for Christianity. It had won scattered proselytes, but the conversion of the Khazars to the undiluted religion of the Most High, Jehovah, is unique in history. In reality, the conversion to Judaism required an act of genius.